And tonight, I am very happy to introduce the fake Steve Jobs. He's an award-winning writer of fiction and nonfiction, insider's knowledge of the high-tech industry. He decided to use his powers for good by starting up the wildly popular blog, The Secret Diary of Steve Jobs. This is the novel of that blog. And here is the fake Steve Jobs.
I just want to start by introducing one of the real legends of the blog. Bike Helmet Girl is actually here. And Tiffany, please stand up. I told you I couldn't throw out in the crowd because you know I can throw out anywhere. Tiffany, Bike Helmet Girl, one of the famous characters. She's a real person. And has, we started off on the wrong foot, Tiffany and I. But, like in Hollywood, you meet cute, and then, things develop, and my initial hatred of Bike Helmet Girl evolved into a sad, unrequited crush on Bike Helmet Girl that was where things remain now, basically. No love at all, right? None. See, look at, yeah, she's like, creep, go away. Anyway, do you talk? Say something. No, okay. Oh, hi. Okay, sorry. I just want you to know, because every one of these events I do, I swear to God, everything I've gone to, during the Q&A, they go, and the whole question is just, I go, yeah, and they go, Bike Helmet Girl. I'm like, what? What about Bike Helmet? Do you know her? Is that real? I'm like, yeah, there's a real person. There really is a Bike Helmet Girl. I mean, everybody always asks about you, so I'm really glad you're finally here, and I'm sorry, really sorry for all the mean things I wrote about you. But you were the one in the underwear and the helmet dancing around with a guy on a leash, so, I think you were fair game. And who wouldn't fall in love with that, right? God, I miss San Francisco. I lived here in 1989 and 90, a long, long time ago, and not far from here. And I always thought I would move back, and I never did. I moved to Massachusetts instead. I went from here to Michigan and did an MFA in the creative writing program there. And it's funny because it's a very serious program and very artsy and, very, it's all about language and stuff. And I think I haven't heard from anybody they went to grad school with, but I think it's just appalling that, now I'm doing this kind of thing. And they think it's wow, it's just so lame. But I really my dream is to go back to Ann Arbor and do actually a reading, from my book from the university as Fake Steve, which is so slumming. But I'll tell you a little bit about the blog and how it started, and then how it became a book, and then we just do questions and answers, so I'll try to whip through it quickly. And you have actually one of the t-shirts. Look at it. He has Dude, I Invented the Freaking iPod. Have you heard of it? T-shirt. I gave one of those to Steve Wozniak last night. Woz came to the event in Menlo Park, and I gave him one, and he held it up. I took a picture of him with it on. It's classic, priceless. But so I work in print journalism, right? I work at Forbes, old, stuffy, boring magazine. But by the way, is there anybody here from Apple PR? Because I just got warned today that Apple PR is actually sending people to these events to make sure I don't say anything bad. So, any of you who are from Apple, look around. And anyway, you're being watched. I just got the word right before I came here, which I thought was really creepy and scary. There was a spy at Menlo Park last night. There was. Anyway, so I work for the print magazine, and print is kind of it's okay, but it's sort of flat. The business isn't going great, and all the new growth and all the new exciting stuff is happening online. And I thought, I should try to learn about that. And I tried to get a transfer to Forbes.com, but a lot of media companies, and Forbes is one of them, have this sort of division where the .com guys really are a whole different animal than the print guys, and they don't like the print guys, and they don't want the print guys coming over. They have their own little thing. It's like a lot of organizations, they have that politics. So they wanted no part of any print refugees, and they have brought a few people over, but not many. So I sort of thought I'll do it on my own. So I'll learn how to blog. That would be the first thing. So I learned WordPress and TypePad, and then I tried Blogger. And I had one of my own kind of blogs, just Dan Lyons, blah blah blah, tech news. Nobody read it. And then I did one with my pictures of the kids, and just for the family. Then I tried Blogger. So what will I do? And I had this idea from Private Eye, the British humor magazine, where they always do this secret diary of somebody, like David Bowie, or somebody preposterous usually, and they make fun of them. And it's like a one-page thing. They're doing it for I don't know how long Private Eye's been in business, but a long, long time. So I thought, a blog's a diary. You could do secret diary of somebody. And then who? And then I thought of Jobs, because I'm kind of an Apple fan, and I also had this idea that all these CEOs, not all, but a lot of CEOs were starting to blog, and there was this concept that, companies should be transparent, and that, CEOs should blog, which I thought was like the stupidest idea ever. I really, really thought was stupid. And I also thought that all the CEOs who were doing it were full of shit. Like the blogs were absolutely phony and fake, but they were all acting like, John Schwartz is telling you what's happening at Sun. Like, no, he's not. He's absolutely not. No more than Sun PR is, right? So, but I thought, like, wouldn't it be great if one of them did do it, and he kind of went crazy, and they couldn't stop him, and he went off the rails, and he really did say what was really on his mind. And, and I thought of Jobs, because you sort of have an idea of what he's like, and he's sort of perfect for that. He sort of presents one face to the world, but he's sort of the mixture of the Zen, but then the hard-ass manager kind of guy, and really driven and sort of obsessive-compulsive. So all sorts of stuff you could riff on. So I started doing these little Steve Jobs jokes, and I sent 2 links. I sent one to Barb Darrow, a friend of mine who you know, and one to David Cherbuck, another friend of mine. I didn't tell them I was writing it. I just said, I found this blog. This is kind of fun. I don't know who this lunatic is. And then one of them put it on his blog, and it started growing and growing. But I wasn't aware if anybody was writing, and I did it for like 6 weeks, and I shut it down. And then somebody else put it back up and said, what happened? What happened to this blog? Blah, blah, blah. So I put it back up, and this time I put a meter on it, and there were actually like, hundreds of people reading it. And I didn't know where they were from or why, like how they found it, but they just did. And so I thought, okay, I'll keep doing that. And it went from then being like stupid jokes about Steve Jobs in his gravity boots or having a mango smoothie or whatever, like there's stuff like, to then like news would happen, right? Like something would happen that I wanted to cover in Forbes, but we come out every other week, and our lead times are really huge. So anything breaking, there's no sense even pitching it to print. Like we're doing our December something or other edition now, right? Like that's what I'm writing for in print now is like way off. So anything that's happening this week is just useless. And Forbes.com will take breaking news, but they don't want everything. So there's all this stuff happening. You had no place to put it. So I thought, I can do it on Fake Steve, but through Steve Jobs' voice, like what he thinks about it, right? And that's when people, I think, started reading it, because they were like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like, it's wacky, but it is probably what he thinks about, DRM or Vista or, Microsoft, whatever. And then the other thing that started happening is I started writing fiction. I was sort of a thwarted fiction writer. Before I started at Forbes, I published 2 books, a collection of short stories and then a novel. And then I was trying to write other novels, but they would never work out. And then all the time that I was supposed to be devoted to fiction, I was doing the blog instead, because it was really fun. I wasn't, there's no point to it, but it was really fun, so I just kept doing it. And I started writing little fictional things like Larry Ellison, and then Bono, and then this whole little cast, and they started having scenes where they're together, and I mean, it was just making them up as fictional characters. And pretty soon, they all came to me to be fictional, like Steve Jobs, Larry Ellison, Bono, Al Gore. I felt like I can say anything I want about them. Katie Cotton, I can make up anything I want. Like, they just became characters for me. They were not, they were based in real life, but they were not, I didn't feel bound by anything about them. I did some reading about Apple. I read some books to try to learn about Jobs' background. I didn't know anything at all about him when I started. And I never covered Apple, and I had never done a single Apple story in all the 20 years of being a tech writer. I never, ever did an Apple story. It was never my beat. So it became this weird hybrid of like fiction on the one hand and news on the other, and funny jokes about the industry or just silly photos. So you could do anything. So I was really just having fun, like playing with blog software and all the stuff you could do with this form that you can't do in print at all. And there's no editor, and all the stuff about blogs is great. You have immediate response. So it was just really, really fun. It was just like this little playground. And you could just keep playing and doing stuff. But then at some point I thought, like, I gotta, find a way to make money, right? So how do we, so I tried ads, but you don't make any money on those AdSense ads. I don't know if any of you have blogs, but they suck. It's like such a ripoff. And I don't know where the money goes, but like, there's no money there. And then I thought, well, I could do a book. At some point, I realized, like, what I'm doing is basically writing the raw material of a book. Like, I have a character, I have a protagonist, I have, an environment that's kind of funny. And so and then the SEC thing happened. And to me, I thought it was going to be, this is last December, I thought that was, by now, would be this huge thing. And it's kind of blown over. But I still thought it was a funny thing that this guy who's sort of all-powerful, this kind of man-god, son of Zeus, born to mortal woman, his, invincible Steve, could actually be in trouble with the SEC. And, like, he could be in a bind that he couldn't get out of, like, the one thing he can't fix. And so that's what I wrote a proposal, and I sold it in January. And then I had to sit down and write it, so that was the bad part. But no, and it came out okay, and it's pretty funny. And it's basically, it's not really the blog at all. It's a self-contained story. There's little bits of the blog in the book. A lot of people think it's just blog items smashed together, but it actually isn't. It's a narrative. It's a novel about opens with Jobs finding out about the SEC, and then he's trying to finish the iPhone. So the struggle is finish the iPhone where all these freaktards are, bumming him out about all this other stuff, and he has to go to meetings with lawyers and that whole thing. So it's the tone of the blog, but it isn't the blog really at all. About 10% of it is probably, like the Bono item is in there, but it's refashioned. The Hillary item is in there, but it's refashioned. So it's like a whole separate little beast of its own. Because I felt like it wouldn't be enough to if you just did blog items between two covers, like, I don't know who would get, what value would be in that, what interest it would be. Frankly, I don't know what interest there is in the other way either, but but it came out okay. It's pretty funny as a book, and it's got a story and it's silly. I actually hope that people who don't read the blog will actually read the book, because people have, there've been reviews in places that clearly they don't know what the blog is at all, and they still reviewed the book, and they liked it. I'm like, how did they get it? But they did, like Entertainment Weekly, but they don't know shit about this stuff, right? Liesl Schillinger in the New York Times, right? It's like, she actually got it. I was like, wow. Yeah. But she said it should be like The Devil Wears a Black Mock Turtleneck, which was pretty clever. And if I think when I did the proposal, I had some clever line like that. I probably could have got a good advance, but instead I got fucked, right? I got no money at all. So, no money. And so it's totally a labor of love. And so the other part of the story that I'll tell before the story is that meanwhile, I never told anybody at Forbes that I was doing this, right? And early on, one of the first people who found the blog and was writing about it was the publisher of Forbes, Rich Kargar, who was writing saying, Silicon Valley's in an uproar about this, and outrageous new blog, and everybody wants to know who it is, and blah, blah, blah. And he had this contest, he was going to give an iPod to anybody who could figure it out. I'm like, oh shit, I know him, right? I mean, I go to meetings and go like, hey. So, I mean, really, I'm thinking I'm screwed, and I kept going and going, and oh my God, it's Veronica Belmont. Wow, both of Fake Steve's crushes are here in one night. That's the Veronica Belmont. Again, legend of the blog. Viscount Girl, Veronica Belmont. Oh my God, wow. I just want to burst into song or dance, but I won't do that. So I'm going along with Forbes, and I'm not telling them. And then in January, right after I sold the book, I hired this lawyer for 1 hour, and I asked her, just so she would be my lawyer, and she couldn't tell anybody, so it was like attorney-client privilege, right? I'm so clever. So I said to her, I told her I'm doing the Fake Steve blog, and she was like, you are your fucking mind, you gotta stop it. There's a policy at Forbes, you can't blog, you can't do this, you're gonna lose you have to stop. So I thought, really? I was gonna, so okay. So I posted this thing that said, I figured I could bow out gracefully, and I said, as Steve Jobs, the Apple lawyers have told me, this crazy old blog, I can't do it anymore because the SEC is trying to fry me, and I can't be making fun of these lawyers while they're trying to put me in jail, so I'm going to shut it down. But then everybody picked up on it thinking that Apple's suing me, the blogger, right? So it became this huge story, and they're all calling Apple for comment, and Apple PR's no comment, and then they think it's really true, and they're like, ah! So my site was just whoa, like crazy. So now it's even more of a thing. Instead of shutting it down, it got worse. So I'm like, oh damn, I'm dead. And but I started getting email from Wired. Leander wrote to me, and Leander Caney's back there in the back row, and some other people saying, we don't know who you are, but would you like to write a column for us? Blah blah blah. So I'm thinking, okay, cool, that's all right. So if I get fired, someone else will hire me to do something. And because meanwhile, I was in New York asking Forbes for a raise and a promotion and to let me be a columnist. The tech columnist went on leave, and I was like, oh, fuck him, let me do the job, right? So, not quite like that, but almost, right? Pretty much, And they were saying, no raise, no promotion, get out of here, you'll lose, you suck. And then meanwhile, so I go back to my hotel room, and I swear to God, I open up the Fake Steve mail account, and there's an email from Rich Kargar of Forbes magazine saying, Dear FSJ, I know you're shutting down this blog. We think you're such a genius, and we want you to come work at Forbes magazine. So write a column for us, and be a tech columnist for us on our Forbes.com website. Right? So I was like, oh, this is too fucking rich. I call all my friends, I'm like, I can't believe it, Kargar's writing to me, right? So I'm thinking, what do I do? So I waited, and I emailed him back asking, how much would you pay me? He's like, well, we'll put you in touch with blah, 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 right? So that's been then, a week later, Elevation Partners, which is Bono's private equity firm, which owns 40% of Forbes, which is another story. When Bono bought Forbes, I'm like, holy crap, I'm making fun of this guy all the time on the blog. So the private equity guys email me saying, we're Elevation Partners, we have these rich VCs from Silicon Valley, and we think your blog could be a great business, and we'd like to invest in it. I'm like, fuck, this is great, right? I'm going to be rich, you know? So I had to talk to my agent, and the agent's bouncing back and forth. Finally, they want to have a meeting, and finally I said, if I'm going to meet with the guy, I got to tell him who I am. So I told him, and I told Rich Cargad, I told the guy from Elevation Partners that it's me. And then they were like, oh. Yeah, okay, yeah. Like, well, yeah, we can do something on the phone. And then, but then it was like this weird limbo period where they weren't going to fire me, or maybe they were, like they couldn't figure out what they were going to do. And then they said, well, we'll try to make something happen on Forbes.com, we'll try to host it for you. But they wouldn't do it, and then Wired came along and said, well, we'll sponsor it. So I had to deal with Wired for a while, and then Forbes came back and said, no, we don't want you taking money from Condé Nast. And I was like, well, F you pay me then. And like that finally came around, and so now the deal is, they sort of jumped on the grenade and said, okay, we'll sponsor it and we'll pay you. And so it's become like it isn't on their site because they don't quite want it that much, right? They don't want it like, I think they have a rule like no swearing on Forbes.com. Like, so the language, they actually literally couldn't put it on their site. So what they did is they left it where it is, and they put ads on it, and like they're like those, now there are those crawly ads or animated ads and like really shitty Forbes ads. Like it just looks just as bad as Forbes.com. So I think I'm gonna like move it off Blogger and put it on a real site with a a nice layout. I need to hire somebody who knows how to do blog design and relaunch it with a new URL and some other features like captions and stuff that people can have fun with in a forum and stuff. But so that's the story of how I survived and ended up in a way getting a raise out of Forbes out of it, and I have a contract for a year. So I managed to keep my job, and I still have the day job. So I do two jobs at Forbes. I have the day job writing the tech column, and then the night job writing Fake Steve. And honestly, they've been totally cool. Like no censorship, no editing. They don't have anything to do with it. They don't moderate comments. They don't even look. I don't think most of them even read it. But they just totally don't. I get a lot of comments saying like, "Oh, now that you write for Forbes, you can't let you do this and that." Like they're so clueless. They just have. They have no interest at all in it. So which is good. They want to let it be just what it is. So if you have questions, we can just have a conversation rather than be yakking on anymore. So down the back, yeah.
I just want to say thank you. I'm sure I speak on behalf of a lot of people. And forgive me, I just came, so forgive me if anybody said this, but once you got outed, I forget the commentator who outed you, but whoever.
Oh, Brad Stone. I'm having breakfast with him tomorrow. I'm probably going to meet him. Yeah, anyway.
All of my friends and coworkers at the time said, oh, now that he's been outed, he's not going to do the same thing. Now it's going to change. Now that people know who he is and he's accountable, he's liable, he's not going to do the same thing, he's going to lay off My Little Pony and all that. And I think I speak for everybody when I say we appreciate that you did not hold back. You kept doing.
But I don't know. I had that offer where I would send a free fake iPod to anybody who went to Jonathan Schwartz's house on Halloween dressed as My Little Pony and got a picture taken with him. But I don't think anybody. I'm checking the email, but nobody sent it in. I still think that would be a great thing to do. And that came from Sun. That was not that name, My Little Pony. Somebody from Sun sent that to me saying because I was calling him Ponytail Boy, and they said no, we have a name for him inside of Sun. We call him My Little Pony. I said, that's so perfect. I had little kids, but I didn't know what My Little Pony was. And then I looked it up and I was like, oh my God. And now my kids, my daughter especially, just came home and the first time, she's 2.5, was like a My Little Pony video. And it's like sick. I can't even watch it. Flying ponies and it's just so wrong, really wrong. But yeah, I decided that if I was going to keep doing it, you can't do it but hold back. And for about 1 week I was sort of gun shy. I was on vacation anyway, and then I just decided okay, I'm just gonna do it because I don't give a shit. It's not like Sun gives me all this great access and I'm pals with them and now they're mad. And even if they do, I don't understand why the Valley Press Corps gets so wrapped up in access. We don't want to piss off Sun because then they won't talk to us. Well, fuck them. They don't say anything anyway. You go there, right? You know this. You've covered this shit. You go there and they just blow smoke up your ass for an hour, right? It's all canned, it's all PR, and it's that's access? I'd rather sit on the outside and make fun of them than have to put up with that shit, So I don't really care, and yeah, the fact that my name's on it is fine. It doesn't matter to me. Sun's not inviting me to any events lately, but Apple still sent me an iPhone, which is pretty amazing. A demo iPhone, and then they shut it off. I was using it one day on the plane, on the shuttle to New York, and I saw this guy, I was like, yeah, I got an iPhone, want to check it out? I was like, fuck. Sure enough, he was dead. But I'm trying now to get a couple iPods out of them, but they're like not returning my email. And I don't know if they're mad or if it's just, whatever. But any other questions or?
How'd you come to work at, I mean,
At
obviously
Forbes?
you have as little respect for Forbes as I do.
Oh no, I have much more respect for them than you do. I just pay my kids are living on Forbes, so no, I have a great deal of respect for Forbes. A great deal of respect for Forbes, and if there are anybody here from Forbes, I want you to know that. I love them very
But how'd you come
much.
to work at Forbes?
I was when they started their website, I was freelancing for them. I was a freelance tech journalist, and the guy who started Forbes.com, David Cherbuck, is a guy I've known since high school. We go way back. In fact, he and I both went to this boarding school. He was actually a boarder. I was a day student, but it's the same school that Steve Jobs went to. So we're a fellow alumni of this prep school in New England, and so I was writing for David and just trying to make a living, working all these trade journals. And then they were looking for people in '98 during the bubble. Suddenly tech was hot, and Forbes wanted all these tech guys, so they asked Cherbuck who should we hire, and they hired me. And I've always stayed in Boston. I don't work in New York, and it's almost like being a freelancer. But I mean, and the funny thing about Forbes, and I know you probably hate it because it's like right wing, and then the front of the book is all the politics are very right wing. But
What's the worship of the rich?
oh, that part's cool. I think. That bothers you? Which I think, really? Well, no, I'm kidding. Yeah, the worship of the rich is another aspect of Forbes that we like to call it the celebration of capitalism. But but the worshiping the rich is another way to put it. But people always think it's like this stodgy. There are these fan fiction sites about me because I cover Linux and they hate me. The Linux guys hate me, and they think like I'm some like right wing, neo-Nazi guy. I don't know what. Anyway, I've been using Linux for like years, but you can't tell them that. I mean, I have told them that, but it doesn't matter. But they have these fan fiction sites and they try to write what it's like at Forbes, and they think it's like Steve Forbes comes striding down the hall, and then I show up in my tassel loafers, and he stuff like these. Yeah, like that. And it's like, the reality is, it's like a pigsty. Like the fourth floor of Forbes where all the reporters are. The first few floors where all the executives are look just like what you think they look like. And then you go up one floor and it's like Animal House. Like so gross, so disgusting, you can't believe it. And everybody there is really cool. It's like a really nice staff and it's a really nice place to work. And people are cool. Like, you'd be amazed. It's not like a bunch of rabid, Muffy and Buffy, and it's not like that at all. It's like they hire regular Jamoke, because Muffy and Buffy hire people like me to do all the dirty, with all the work, right?
They're sully. They're
So the people doing the work are all regular Jamokes, but yeah, it's I understand where you're coming from. Any questions? Sorry. Yes.
Well, aside from Waz last night, have you heard from any of your other characters?
Let me think. Al Gore, no. Right? And Scott McNeely, no. My Little Pony, no. Yeah, I guess I don't think so. Well, except for Bike Helmet Girl, Tiffany, and then who else? Veronica Belmont has written email, even because I sort of ripped her once, and she. Oh, Owen Thomas. Like the media people, yeah, like the media people all get it. Like the Ballywag guys, they all those guys all get it, and Nick Wingfield at the Journal. But on the executive side, like no. Well, I went to Apple. No, I mean I went to Microsoft last week and I did a talk there, and it was amazing. They had like 150 people. They were laughing their asses off. I made fun of the Zune, made fun of Vista. They were like, they loved it, and they totally they don't mind the Beastmaster stuff. I mean, I mean, Gates loves it. Honestly, what does he care? The guy's like rich, he doesn't care. But no, so I've never really, those kind of guys don't. I don't even think they read it, to be honest. I think it's like, I doubt that they pay any attention to it really at all. But, sorry. Anybody else have a question? Yes.
One thing, did Kathy Griffin show up with Waz?
No, she didn't. And I was so bummed. I really wanted to meet her.
I guess the other thing is, I was reading one of the things that he posted, I think it was today. And
Waz posted? Oh, that was.
Yeah, fake Steve posted.
Oh.
And it was something like, I was wondering if it was like, if you're just like writing and you accidentally make a mistake saying like, you'll be able to save South Korea, like save America from nuking South Korea when...
Yeah, that was an intentional mistake, right? Yeah, so I do these intentional mistakes where, and I'm trying, you have to be more subtle now, because I used to make them really easy to spot. But now, so with the South Korean one, I said the things that Steve thought he could do if he was elected president on the jobs ticket would be, he would stop global warming, get us out of Iraq, and I put the Korean one in the middle and make peace with the South Koreans, right? So of course, I get like gazillions of emails, dude. I think it's North Korea. That's like my favorite thing about the internet. Like even as a reporter, like for the last years, right? If you write an article, especially anything online, and it's like allow people to who would never write a letter to the editor to have this instant thing where they can correct you and tell you what a dick you are, and they're really condescending, and they're usually like real bastards, you know, like really snotty little pricks, right? And especially if you cover Linux, like you get these things like, it's actually GNU Linux, you know, you made a mistake with the factor, would like a retraction, please? I'm like, yeah, right. So, but you get like an overwhelming amount. So like I started doing this thing where I wrote something, I'd have Jobs say something in French, and I'd say, you know, as they say in Latin, and then all of you write it, that's Latin, you idiot, you idiotic American. And like the best one was Portugal. I had one where I said that somebody sent me like a document from Portugal. It was in Portuguese about a registration statement saying there's going to be an Apple store in Lisbon. So I said, you know, the Portugalians are all excited because it's finally going to be an Apple store in Lisbon. I said, I don't read Lebanese, but if you do, it's the attached document because what it says is that we're opening a store in Lisbon, and they're really happy because until now, the only way they could get Apple products was from neighboring countries in the Middle East. And so, how broad is that, right? Like, who reads that and goes, what an idiot, right? But yet they are, like millions of people do, apparently. So they all start writing in, like, you dumbass American, how can you run a company and you don't even know what Portugal is? And then it spread from that to, like, somebody must have sent it to Portugal. And, like, people who didn't read the blog at all, who didn't cover tech. And, like, because suddenly I just got, like, overwhelmed with, like, all this mail and all these comments telling me how stupid I was and Portugal wasn't in the Middle East. And then I got email, and I got this really nice email from this woman, I think it was a woman, and very polite, dear Mr. Jobs, you know, love your product, love your company, and I know in America there's a lot of places that are far away. She was like very patronizing, explaining to me where Portugal was, and it's next to Spain, it's not in the Middle East. So I ran her letter without putting her name on it, but I said, you know, thank you so much, I apologize. I like to do the fake apologies for the fake mistakes, and then in the fake apology, I like to put another fuck up. So, you know, and it's like unending. Like, see how long you can keep those things going, like keep people mad. And I'll actually do them where I'll do a fake language or a geographical mistake. And I'll be, my wife and I share an office at home, so I'll do it at night, and I'll be like, okay, I'll read it to her. I'm about to send this. Click. And then we wait and see, like, how long until the first asshole writes in, right? We're like, bam, you know, 5 minutes. And then it's like, how long until the first person writes in laughing at the asshole, right? Like, so it's like this, another thing about blogs, like, you can turn the audience back on itself and have people fighting with each other. It's amazing. So, but yeah, those mistakes, like somebody else asked me last night about the Neil, I said, oh, to everything there's a season, turn, as Neil Young once said. I got all these like mad letters like, that's not Neil Young, dude. Like, yeah, anyway. So, and it was better before I was outed because people really didn't know who was writing it, so they really thought, like, now they know it's like some guy and they kind of know they're being played with, but they still write in. That joke still works. It's amazing to me. Because it's been like a year that's been going on. But, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Speaking of geopolitical interests, where is Krasnodar?
Oh, that's in Russian. So I have a friend from Krasnodar, and that's why I started using that. And I first started using it because I had Sergey Brin had this imaginary uncle called Uncle Fetja, who came over from Krasnodar, and he was so excited to be living in the West. And he had a list of things he wanted to do, and one of them was he wanted to sit in an entire bathtub full of caviar with 2 hookers. So Sergey gets them for him, sets the whole thing up, and says, okay, fine. And he's like, you know, check that off your list of things to do in life. And then he wanted this giant van to drive him around. So Uncle Fetch had all this stuff, and Sergey said, look, you don't understand. He's telling Steve, like, you don't understand. The guy comes from Krasnodar. It's like a real shithole. And like, you know, anything he needs, I want to get it for him. So then I invented the 2 interns, Yulia and Natasha from Krasnodar, who, I don't even know where that came from, right? And I actually had people a lot of people in Russia read the blog, and they would write to me before I was outed saying, you know, my wife speaks Russian, so they would, and reads this, so she does a lot of the translation on that stuff for me. So we would wind them up by writing entire passages in Russian, you know, like comment strings back to them, so they'd be like, you really are Russian, like, but no, it's all just I don't know, it's just all silly and made up. Yes.
Well, there's a lot of speculation in the press about who you really were as a journalist yourself. Did you feel like you were starting to be violated by the press, or was it an invasion of your privacy?
Well, no. I mean, you know, like Valleywag, like spoofing my IP and stuff, like trying to get my IP. That stuff kind of bummed me out. But I was emailing with Owen Thomas the whole time that they were doing all those articles and trying to figure out, like when they outed me as Leander Caney, right, and then 2 other guys. And I was emailing back and forth with him, and I was trying to mislead him, and I was telling him that I lived in San Francisco and that I saw him every day. He didn't know who I was, but I walked right by him this morning, and that I ate at Pancho Villa's on 16th Street all the time. And he was like, "You do?" I was like, "Yes, I'm there." He was like, anyway, so I was, I was giving him back as good as he was giving me, but at the same time, we were having a very amicable email exchange about like, look, because I knew it was there's too many people who knew. So as soon as he was out, I figured like, let's go have dinner, we'll talk, and we're gonna have dinner Monday night. But I met him last night at the party. But no, it was okay. Even Brad Stone. I mean, Brad Stone. He was pretty clever about the way he found out about it, but it was kind of silly, like, because so many people knew that I knew, like, it was so silly to keep it a secret. But it was like, I also wanted to keep the curtain up, because I think for a lot of people it was better to not know and just be able to pretend, and I was really concerned that once that fell apart, like, people wouldn't keep reading it, and, the readership has kind of fallen off a little bit, but there's still a lot of people reading it, so I guess people, the other good thing was I was so unknown and so, like, obscure that even though they go, it's, okay, who? They don't know who I am, right? If it turned out that it was Woz doing it, or somebody well known, then it would ruin it. But it's like some random guy from Boston that we can. So no, it was okay. It was kind of a fun little thing for a few months. But I was sick of it. I was kind of, in a way, I was really relieved when it broke. And I was like, okay, I don't have to do that anymore. And try to be, because yeah. Sorry.
Two unrelated questions. One is, had you not been outed, how would you have worked a book tour? Would you just?
No, I wasn't going to do one. That's why there's no books on the book tour. It's like, because they were going to put the book out anonymously and not have any book tour. And then when I got busted, it was August, and it was like too late to really book anything. So they booked a few things on the last minute. But no, we were just going to put it out and have no tour and just nothing. No, and that's the other thing. The other thing that's good about getting outed was that, like, I went to Toronto a few weeks ago, even before the book was out, and they posted something saying, somebody wrote to me saying, "Are you doing a bookstore in Toronto?" I said, "No, but do you want to get together?" And 30 people showed up in a bar and we hung out, and you get to meet the people who read the blog, which is actually really cool because, it's mostly nice people and with a few interesting exceptions at some of the events, but it's like pretty cool. So you can actually meet people. So it's actually nicer to be open and writing it and meet the people who are reading it. And I get actually more email now since I was outed. I get lots more email from people with story ideas and stuff. So.
The other part was,
sorry.
Where did Siuma come from?
I was writing that Uncle Fester thing, that Lunch with Fester item, and I just thought, like, what would he say to Ballmer that would, and that was the one where I had been sort of like tepid for a while after I got busted, and I thought, if I'm going to do this, I got to really do like a red meat, I got to dive right into a real nasty one. So and that was the one where everybody commented like, oh, okay, good, you're back, all right, thank God, we're back in the saddle now. But I had to do one, I figured like, do one about Microsoft. And Ballmer's been going around shaking down all the Linux guys with these fake, this FUD about patents, but he won't tell them what the patents are. And instead they all make deals with him. I don't know why. They all go, okay, well, sign up. So I thought, like, if you ever pulled that at Jobs, what would Jobs say, And I just thought, I was just writing it, and I thought, like, I was trying to think of another acronym that would have been, it was something like, it wasn't suck it out of my ass, it was something like that. But then anyway, Siuma had you could make it into a nice word that would work, right? So I don't know, just thought of, like, that's what Steve would say. And it turns out somebody last night from Apple told me at this event that they do have little acronyms inside like that for little words. And they even put them on products sometimes, like code names. Anyway, how about,
So,
are you Ryan?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
This
so-
is Ryan Block of Engadget, just so you know. I mean, another internet celebrity, like, AKA
I don't
the
have a
luckiest
question.
man in the world. He dates Veronica Oh my God. Yes.
No, I don't have a question, but I did want to comment that, I interviewed you back in March.
On I Am, right?
Right,
Yeah.
where I am. And we ran it as an April Fool's Day thing, and some people
That's
thought
right.
it was a complete joke, and some people knew that we actually had interviewed you. But I think the thing that struck me the most is that you were able to do it in real time. Like, everything that was published, that whole conversation, I actually went back and thought about it, and I was like, if I was going to pretend to be Steve Jobs, how would I reply to these questions, and what would I say? And even thinking of the reply to one question took me minutes. The
Yeah.
fact that you're able to do it in real time is actually kind of frightening.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to leave that right there. It's really nice, thank you. No, you know what it is? I've been doing it for a while, and it's a little sick. It gets addictive, and the voice starts to, like, just be there, and you wake up in the morning. There was a time where I thought, like, I would wake up some days and not have any ideas, and I guess it's over, But then I'd wake up one day like, oh, like the evil Steve is back. But I was telling somebody last night that, like, I had a meeting at Comedy Central, and this guy who knows Robert Smigel, who does Triumph, the insult dog, was saying that Smigel, and I love that, right? I love Triumph the dog, right? The insult dog. But he said, Smigel in person, it's just like the nicest, gentlest, sweetest guy you'd ever meet, like soft-spoken, blah, blah, blah. And he said, like, and then you put a dog puppet on his hand, and he just goes, he turns into Triumph. He's just like, "Argh!" And it's kind of like that for me. Like, I've been doing that voice for a long time. Like, writing the book was, in a sense, easy because I had the voice. I could just riff all day in that voice of Steve, you know. But
I'm so sorry.
I know it's. I just feel my wife feels. I mean, she's like, yeah. But she doesn't even read it. My wife doesn't even read the blog ever. Has never read it. Like, she's looked at it a couple times when I said to her, "Oh, you should check this one out." She's like, oh, but like she has no interest at all. She doesn't do anything about tech, and she just has no interest at all, and it just speaks volumes about our relationship. Yeah, not good volume. Anyway, questions? Anyone else? This guy hasn't asked one yet. Sorry.
Have you ever worn a mock turtleneck?
I have not. And somebody gave me one last night. Actually Woz, the bookstore got it, and then Woz presented to me like this. It's from the Apple store. It has a little apple on it with a mock turtleneck. And I was like, no way am I putting that thing on. And I get asked a lot, like I get these requests like, how'd you have to come to a conference? And I'm like, yeah, okay, that sounds cool, you know. Right. And they're like, and we thought it would be cool. I'm like, oh, I know where this is going. Right? You could come out in a turtleneck and then some glass and take. I'm like, no, I'm not doing the turtleneck. I'll come, you know, but. I don't know why that geeks me out so much. I think if you were an actor, it would maybe feel better, but I'm not. You know, it's like so. No, I'll probably never wear a turtleneck again in my life. You know, even skiing, I'll just like avoid them. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You said you took a break after like 6 weeks in the beginning.
Yeah.
When you came back, it almost seemed like a different person.
I know, and then people, that bummed me out. And everybody was like, this is not the real fake Steve, this is a new fake Steve. I'm like, fuck, you know? How do you convince them? Like, no, it really is me. And they'd be like, no, it isn't, you're an imposter, but the real one was funnier. I'm like, oh, you know? And then at some point, people, actually, it was a period of time. It took people weeks for people to start saying, I think this is the same fake Steve, this is the same one, you know? It's like, because when I shut it down for a while, there was another guy who started posting a fake Steve blog, and it was okay. I didn't think it was as good as mine, but it was, and then that led to confusion. So people didn't know who was doing it. And then I realized, like, yeah, you could have. There's another fake Steve blog, I think, where a guy imitates me. And then there's another one. This guy who in Toronto who hates me. His name is Tim Ransom, and he hates me for Linux stuff. He already had a hate site set up for me for Linux it was like fan fiction. It was like horrible stuff, like Steve Forbes buggering me in the hallway at Forbes, and I'm like, I hate Linux, you know, like, phone, it's like so bad, right? But I knew, and he's fixated on tassel loafers, right? And that's the only reason I knew that he's the same asshole doing the fake Steve blog hating thing, because he's fixated again on the tassel loafers, right? So I'm like, you know, it's his little tell, and. You know, he has this thing where like he reads my blog, the fake Steve blog now, and then he writes about like how it reveals that I'm a bad person, you know, in various ways. And, like, you know, if I say as Steve Jobs, well, there's only one thing I hate more than the media, and that's Scandinavians. Like, I write a thing saying, this guy's racist, he hates Scandinavians. Well, I'm like, dude, I don't hate Scandinavians, and I don't think Jobs does either. It's just funny, you know. But anyway, there's a question down in the back, I think. Was there somebody? No. Oh, yeah.
I was just wondering, one thing that I enjoy almost as much as your articles are the pictures that accompany
them. Oh, yeah.
Especially Hillary Clinton looking down. Like, where do you find these photos?
I just
like
do Google images. You know, on Google, if you do image search, on Google, you can find, like, wacky pictures. It's amazing. It is really, like, you know, the cow one recently about the, you know, the...
With the tongue?
Yeah, the town. I just did a search for cow, and, like, then you have to be patient. You have to flip through pages and pages of photos. But I still can't get over that. Like, the one laptop per child people... Now, did you read this? It was a real story from Kid Portal. They linked to that. They're going to try to do a cow-powered laptop, like, because there's no electricity in this town near Mumbai, and there's no water, and there's no wind, and anything else. So they thought, well, but we got cows. So we'll hook them up and put a generator below it. It's like the tail wagging the dog, you know what I mean? If you got, like, you know, the poor cow, and all I can think is, like, the poor cow's like, fuck, Nicholas Negroponte, you know, leave me alone, just got that laptop, you know? Or crank it yourself, you little punk, right? Like, you got the salad spinner thing, you know? And that's another one where I actually, that project drives me crazy, and I don't know why. And it's like Scoble. Scoble drives me crazy, and I don't know why. We were talking about that at lunch today. Like, what is it about Scoble that's so annoying? But, like, and it's like, once you get him in your head, you can't get him out. You know, Scoble, you know? Like, the one that Ballywag had this week, and I'm waiting to riff on it, it's like, where he's filming himself driving and talking about the lunch he just had. It's like, Scoble, like, turn it off. Like, for 5 minutes, take a break, you know? And then he's into Twitter, and oh, Jesus Christ. Anyway, but yeah, I got to lay off, I think, the XO machine, because I don't think Steve Jobs really probably thinks about it as much as I do. So, sorry that rambling answer. But are there any other questions? guy's asleep back there. So, no, I was actually to read when I was in Ann Arbor. Some like really famous novelist came to read, and some guy, and it was like one of those readings where they're like really like, you know, precious language and beautiful, blah blah blah. And it was like 10 rows back to this guy, like snoring really loud, like, and nobody dared go over, you know. And it was like Bharati Mukherjee, you know, like some famous woman. But anyway, he wasn't sleeping. I just made that up. There's any questions? Any other things you want to know? No. Okay. Oh yeah. Sorry. Okay. This.
Mine was more just like, can you just like riff on Facebook? Because the whole Facebook just seems so. I mean, I use it and check it all the time, but the whole thing.
See, well, there you go, right?
Yeah, but no, it's like it just seems so ridiculous how it's like, okay, we're worth this much, but now we're worth this, and it's just like, is there a limit? And
I don't know.
The guy who, whether it's Scott Zuckerberg or Mark Zuckerberg,
Yeah.
he just seems like the most boring. I don't know. It's just, he seems like he'd be perfect.
We should all be so boring, you know. I wish I were that boring, you know. I think what he's really smart was he put himself between Google and Microsoft and put himself in a position where he made himself very valuable to Microsoft, so that, you know, because in this war between these two giants, he sort of made himself a pivotal player, somebody that they both want to get a hold of. So he drove the valuation up. But yeah, I've had some items about that. I actually had to write. I wrote a Forbes column about Facebook too, in my regular, you know, day job, talking about it. And I like being in your 40s on Facebook, because it's weird. Like, you know, it's like a strange thing. If you're a college kid, I think it's okay. But like, there's all these people encouraging us, you know, to like get on Facebook, especially if you're in tech and all the PR people use it. So I finally caved in and did it because so many people were like, inviting, you know, like all my friends from Forbes. But then you get on there, and like this guy I work for, my editor, sent me a thing, you know, Bruce up, and he's like my age, right? Do you want to do the movie app? And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Right? And they're like, you fill out this questionnaire with like 500 movies. Like, what do you think of each freaking movie? And like halfway through, I'm like, why am I doing this? This is insane. I don't give a shit what movies he likes, right? I like him. He's a really good guy, and I don't care if he likes my movies. And then the same thing with the music thing. You know what down like I like, and put a list of your bands. But I think if you're 12 or like 15 or 20, maybe you do define yourself by. No, seriously, I think it's a young kid thing. Like you maybe do define yourself by like what bands you like and what, you know, what you listen to. I'm 47, right? I really don't, you know, I don't have time. I got little kids, and I just don't give a shit if anybody likes what music I like, and it's nice if we do. But like, I think when you get older, you don't define yourself in that way by like, oh, I'm this kind of a U2, or not a U2 or whatever that you know, some band you listen to. But yeah, I think it has appeal for kids. It's like Webkins is what I finally realized. Like Webkins, I don't want to play on Webkins, right? But I would love to be a shareholder in Webkins, right? Because like little kids can't stop, right? They love it. I think Facebook's really the same for a different demographic. And now they're trying to find a way to make it useful to older people, and maybe they will, because with the open apps, you know, people will come up with applications that make it useful to people my age. But for now, I don't get it. But I think Jobs likes it, so I have to be careful. Like, I've riffed on it, but then I think Jobs probably seems to like it. So to stay in character, you kind of have to go, well, yeah, I guess it's what I resign myself to is just saying every time the valuation going up, like, dude, like, you know, I honor the place. You're such a, you know, you're a con man almost as good as me. And, you know, like, I have to give you props, Zuckerberg. And, anyway, another question? Yeah, go ahead.
Not jobs related, but just how did you transfer from getting an MFA to being a tech columnist?
Yeah, yeah.
Don't want to sound like your parents or anything.
Yeah, no, my parents wanted me to go to med school. This is all bad for my parents. This is all fucked up. Like, no, and I originally started off in school like heading toward medicine, and then dropped out, and so I was trying to become a professor. I did an MFA, and I published a book of stories, and I would go to the MLA for these job interviews. And I would never, it's very hard to get a job in teaching, and like a real one. And I was adjuncting at Michigan, and it's like terrible, you don't get paid anything. And I was always doing freelance work, and Forbes came along and offered me this job, like it fell in my lap. And I thought, you know, it's an okay place because you have a lot of freedom, you have a lot of time between stories. So I thought it would be a good place to have a job and then still try to write. But yeah, it was kind of by accident. If I had got a really good teaching job back in 1992 or 93 when I graduated, I probably would have just done that. But I never did. So, like, you know, accidental. I didn't set out to be like, I'm burning with lust to be a business writer and write about, you know, like, not really. But it is. On the other hand, it is kind of fun. It's not the worst job in the world. I mean, it's like, you know, I kind of like business, but more from I look at it like sports. It's kind of like, you know, you have scores, the money, but I like the characters and the people more than the actual. I don't know. I'm not an MBA. I don't have any of that background, but I kind of like covering some of the hoo-ha around business. And And Fake Steve's sort of an outlet for that too, because you can really, really lance some of that bullshit, like when people write that, corporate stuff. Do you have a question? Yeah.
You said you hadn't ever written anything about Apple before you started doing this blog. Do you write about Apple now, or do you try to avoid that to keep from muddying the waters?
I had to write about the iPhone. I probably won't write about them much. I don't think it's too bad. I mean, they know who I am now, and I mentioned the iPhone, and I did a thing in our last edition about the BlackBerry and an iPhone, and how I liked, what things I liked about each of them in comparison to each other. But I don't think I'm ever going to write an Apple news story like we have other writers who'll do that. I'm writing about gadgets now, and even in that job, the problem with covering gadgets for Forbes is that Walt Mossberg and David Poe get everything first. They get everything before we do. So it's kind of like I could write something about the iPod Touch now.
We do all right.
What?
We do all right. Gadget.
Oh, and gadget too.
Yeah, I mean we don't. Yeah,
Well,
they
you
get
get
it
it-
for us, but who cares?
Yeah, right, I guess. But like for us, it's just like there's no value. I mean, I at least the sense I get from my editors is like we don't want to do it if it's already been covered and we're going to be 2 months later. Like, would you write a story about the iPod Touch now? Like, no. I mean, what would you say? It's been out for a while, and yeah. So I don't know if I'm really going to write much about Apple. I mean, I wrote something about Apple recently. No, for Forbes about them being Big Brother, sort of taking. Now they've gone from being an underdog to being a powerful company, and how people are afraid of them now. Like the movie companies are scared of them. But yeah, I don't think I would shy away from covering them. But it's again, they're a very hard company to cover because you can't get any access. They don't talk to you, right?
How do you
they
feel
talk
about
to you?
being an Apple pundit now, though? I mean, now people calling on you to comment on the company. You were you were giving some opinion on just this last week.
On where?
I forget, but it was one of
In
the
some
big
story
calls,
someplace?
Yeah. And it was like, what? They're calling on a comment from Facebook.
Oh, that's right. I was on CNN International. That's right. But
Yeah,
that was set up.
it's like-
Well, yeah, but that was bullshit because they wanted me to go on and talk about the book. That was the setup, right? And then it happened to be that they set it up on the day of the earnings call. So then they wanted me to talk about the earnings. I'm like, oh, they're great. I literally, what I love about TV is you can say like, this is literally what I said. This is such shit, right? And they gobble it up. Like, well, what do you think of the earnings? And I think, well, the key is those great products. The iPod, the iPad, they're making great products, and that's showing up in the earnings. And like, they think that's great. They're like, they eat, good job. I'm like, I don't know what else to say, And I was in Seattle. I was on the road. I was doing it remotely. I looked up the numbers. I saw what they were. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of a stupid hit. But no, I don't think I get called.
Which one slashed out the other day as well, though, wasn't there?
What
something?
side?
In print, yeah. I thought you had comment in print. Well, they linked to some opinion that you had as Dan Lyons, editor at Forbes. Not in your persona as Fake Steve Jobs, but here's your opinion on Apple.
Oh, that might have been the Big Brother story, wasn't it? You got slashed on it?
What was that one?
It was called Big Brother. It was about Apple being, a big scary company now instead of being the underdog. And how do you negotiate? Like, I think it's an interesting thing from a communications perspective. How does a company go navigate that transition from being an underdog to now being a dominant player? And it's sort of two different roles, and people are a lot more comfortable with an underdog than they are with a dominant player. And companies have to manage that transition and how they communicate to the world of who they are. And you see some of that, or they risk the backlash that Apple's seeing now, where people sort of resent everything they do and see them as greedy and all the things we think about big bad companies. But I didn't know that. I don't know if that was the one. I've been on the road. I haven't seen it at all. But you mean like, is it? Can I be an Apple pundit now? By the way, this is Leander Caney, the Cult of Mac guy. So he is the Apple pundit, right? You're like the king of Apple pundits, right?
Well, yeah, but not as funny as you are. So.
But there you go. But you know more about it. But I don't think I'll be an Apple pundit. I don't think
It seemed like a couple of people have called upon you, that being a blogger, your star has definitely risen, So it seemed like you're a mainstream pundit now, but they weren't calling upon this.
That would be good if I could become a pundit. I guess I don't know. Is there any money? I don't think being a pundit is. I don't think it pays at all. I did something on Fox Business News this week, and it's so hilarious. It's like the new Fox Business Network, and it's like it's not real news. It's Fox News. It's so crazy, and they're just so insane. And it's just as insane as you think it would be. Like I went down there Sunday night, and I had to go in early Monday morning, and they're like wacky. And I was like, oh, this is great, and. I totally had fun with it, and they said, "We'll have you back to talk about Apple." I'm like, "Oh, okay, whatever." I don't know. I can't imagine Fake Steve could become a pundit about Apple. Really, I mean, do you? I think it's a little crazy,
No, definitely not.
And then me personally, I guess I could, but I mean, I get called once in a blue moon to go talk about earnings. So I go, and I can't get anybody else because it's like the Friday before Labor Day weekend, and it's at 6:30 at night, and they're like, "We need somebody to talk about IBM," and like everybody else on the list said no, and they finally get to me, and then I go and. screw it up.
The best thing about Fake Steve, though, is it's very astute. Your analysis is dead on.
Yeah.
And so it's like Colbert or The Daily Show.
Yeah.
It's sort of, it's fake news, but it's actually more truthful
Sometimes,
than,
yeah.
than real stuff. I thought, it was very astute. I loved
Yeah,
it.
sometimes it's like a grain of truth in it, yeah, which is a little weird, but I don't know.
You did a whole post about like the media strategy, the future of TV,
Yeah.
the negotiations with NBC and how they're stacking it up. And that was some of the best stuff I thought that was written about those topics.
Well, thank you again, Leander. Thanks. And the funny thing is that like that stuff is stuff that I would pitch to Forbes. And they'd be like, no, we don't want that shit. And then you put it on a blog and like you get like 1 million people reading it, and then suddenly like, oh, who are you? We want to hire you. Like it's messed up, right? It's totally messed up. Like those same stories I would pitch to Forbes.com.
You couldn't write them the same way, though, could you? And there's no way you could do that.
Take out the F word. I mean, it's not that different. It really isn't. I mean, Forbes.com is pretty loosey-goosey, very conversational. Even Forbes print is actually meant to be very conversational. But the problem is it goes through so many editors, so many layers of people, like at Wired, right? And you go through so many different people, and they all add stuff, and it comes out the other end, like, it takes forever. It just doesn't have the immediacy of, like, the tight wire act of a blog where, the guy falls off sometimes. You're like, like every once in a while is a good one, but yeah. What? Nothing. Is there a question? I'm sorry. Anybody? No? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming.